I went to the hospital the day after that. We found out my dad had passed away and signed a waiver stack like this big. And they're like, yeah, I'm not going to have all this like equipment on me to go to my dad's funeral. And I'm not going to fly with this because my brother's going to have to carry me and I'm going to empty a catheter bag and all this BS. And they're like, okie dokie, but like sign all of this. So I signed all these waivers and things like that. And I left and I went for a walk and it hurt like hell. And you just start the healing process. And for anybody out there that's not aware, your body doesn't want to be sick. It doesn't want to be in pain. That's just kind of a default setting for it. And the pain receptors that are associated with physiological pain is the same brain center that is associated with emotional pain.
Guys, oh my goodness, I'm so excited for today. We are going to nerd out on some science behind labels, science behind connections, science behind all kind of things. And man, Dr. Chris Lee, I'm super excited because the way that you talk about, you said, I want to give people the cheat code to having a better, more high performing and reaching their potential kind of life.
Yes.
And so you help peak performers kind of game genie life. You give them the up, up, down, down, left, right, BA code to their
That
life.
old NES code.
Yeah.
Yes.
So after hearing all of that, why don't you break it down to what's got you excited about what you do?
Absolutely. So like, first off, like, thank you so much for having me. I'm always so grateful to connect with amazing human beings, and everybody that's out there, like, give this dude some massive love when you get to hear or listen or all the above with this. Cause he's just an amazing human being since the first time that I ran into him. So I just want to express some gratitude for you, my man, and like getting your message out there. I know it's not an easy battle and you're doing it. And what got you to this point, right? With all our high performers, what got them to this exact moment? The person that's listening to this right now, what got you here, right? Curiosity, need for growth, need for happiness, all of those different things. Turns out we can reverse engineer those types of things in our high performers. So when I first got into this, I was completely broken. I didn't have a lot left in the system. I had been hit by a car, my body was broken. I very fortunately, lost my father to mental illness and suicide. And then very shortly after, at a very young age, I became a dad with no money in the bank account. And then on top of that, I was in the middle of my doctorate and then boom, $200,000 in debt, like 2 days later. So I had all of these things going against me and I had labeled them as bad because your nervous system, your brain automatically defaults into stress when things hit the ceiling because you have potential inside of you, but you can't achieve that potential if you are dead. So my nervous system had gone through and labeled that category of things as bad. Now, we knew that I could go back and start to transform those things. I've seen hundreds of people do it, right? Tony Robbins was getting dish soap poured down his throat. Elon Musk didn't start with hardly anything, and now he has this multi-billion-dollar company. All these people have these success stories. Bill Gates, all of these people have these success stories, right? And I started to get extraordinarily curious of like, what is their mindset doing? And that's how I really got into this, is like, what is the mindset of these people doing? And it's not right. The mindset is a symptom. It's not the cause. Like, it's such a downstream thing to get after. So I started to go after deeper into the neuroscience of it because your mind lives inside of your brain. And if I actually want a better mindset and the seed of potential is my mind, well, what am I planting that seed in is my brain state. So if I could learn to shift and elevate and transform and get more creativity and activate different portions of my brain, I could actually hack my mindset at a deeper, more sustainable cause down the road. And what this is really doing is blending science and spirituality, right? Because there's Tibetan Buddhist and there's all of these different lineages from our Eastern cultures that have been telling us, sit in silence, ponder your thoughts, do all of these things, right? Like the Tao Te Ching, all of these very profound things. We are now merging science with spirituality now to actually show us how to make a more coherent nervous system. And that's what I'm really about now, because you can get your head right. And that was where I started. Like, I'm going to get my brain right? I'm going to get myself motivated and into action, but motivation is bullshit. realistically. You just need to get plugged back into your purpose, right? Which is really getting clear on the direction you want to take your life. Motivation is, again, a symptom of having a clear purpose. So I start to get rid of motivation and I start to go after, okay, I need drive, I need hustle. And I'm like, well, no, that's not right either, because like if I have work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm absolutely exhausted. But if on Saturday, I know that I'm going on vacation, I have infinite amount of energy on Friday. So it must not be drive, because that's something that's inside of the brain as well. I've created this extrinsic reward from an intrinsic system. So I started reverse engineering, starting to make more and more sense of all these things. And it brought me to where I am today, where yes, we need to heal traumas in the past, because if we don't heal those traumas in the past, they will project into our future. There's absolutely a portion of psychology or neurobiology that has to go on with this. So that's phase one of this, is getting the head right and doing some atonement, which is the undoing of fear in our past, so that we can better create a future. Because we all carry this 5-gallon bucket of experience, right? This is who we are. And then we pour more into it, but it's already at capacity. So we just get this overflow. So if you've ever felt like you're stuck, plateaued, not going as fast as you once were, well, your bucket's full, right? And we just need to empty some of that out. We need to process, we need to integrate some of these experiences. So that's phase one. And then phase two is maintaining body awareness and emotional intelligence, right? Thoughts are the language of the brain and feelings are the emotions of the body, or the language of the body. And what we want is coherence between those two things, because if we don't have coherence, we create cognitive dissonance, which is a disconnect and a chaotic behavior pattern of this is how I think and this is how I feel. And instead of them creating something, they destroy each other, and it takes a lot of energy. So what I do now is high performance coherence coaching, where let's get you aligned on your purpose, aligned on your values, and then get you some systems in place that will allow you to calibrate this system over and over again, so that you have a limitless supply of purpose, which is going to give you motivation, and inspiration, which is going to give you drive. So those are the types of things that I'm really passionate about, because the neuroscience is proving this over and over again right now.
So, man, that's a lot to
Yeah.
process right
Yes.
there. I'm curious because I've heard some of your story before, but I'm curious to go back a little bit and talk about that time when you're in school, you had just been hit by a car or a bus, and all that was going on with your dad. Like, how did, looking back, how did you start to, like, how was that the moment when you're like, something's got to change and I'm responsible for that?
Yeah. So I'll take you guys to that moment. So I was 22, and early on, or at the end of the year starting to close down. I've always been a very like active person, always participated in sports, and went collegiate athlete and started to run track and do all these things all the way up through university. So when I got to my doctorate and they're like, I'm going to need you to sit down for like 80, 90 hours a week and like study in books, I was like, no, how about no? But you don't have an option. So we get like 20, 30-minute breaks inside of there. So I bought a $50 single speed bike, and I was in Atlanta. So there's a ton of hills. So during my breaks and during back and forth to my apartment, I'd ride my single speed bike and rip around the trails and stuff like that and just have a blast. So I just finished up with a neurophysiology midterm. And to this day, I know there was words on that test that were not in English. They weren't even a part of any written language that I have any idea about. This dude was just being a jackwagon. And he's like, well, we need to get the flirts to occur and get it up and running. I'm like, it's not English, man. It's not English. So I walked out of there, and every time you fail a test in doctorate school, it's around $400, $500, $600, right? Depending on what class you're in. So I just like looked at that and I'm just like, well, I just pissed away like half a grand, right? So went to my bike, unchained it, and went to the local Walmart where I was going to get $2 bottle of wine and clearance dark chocolate. Going to go home, watch Friends, and have a good cry, because what else do you do when you just get wrecked? So spent my $4, was going to go home, have a really great experience. On my way home, pedaling, and I'm listening to music and things like that. And to be fair, Atlanta is a fairly safe cycling city. And I just like got my lucky lottery ticket. So I'm bombing down a hill, probably going 30, 35, have a helmet on, everything, like got the flashing lights on the front and the back. Everything was like to a T. And this person just wasn't paying attention, and they blew a stop sign. We think they were probably going 30, 25 miles an hour too. So the kinetic energy of both of those, I hit them hitting me type of thing. So it went kind of like boom, boom, and hit me into a ditch. They didn't stop because I'm sure they probably thought I was dead. So I laid in the ditch for about 2 hours and finally came to, got up, bike was completely broken, but it rolled. So I stood on my pedal and I like went down the rest of the hill to my apartment. I knew I didn't have to pedal. So it's about a mile away. And the whole time it like everything's kind of like fuzzy and like floating in and out. And I finally like realized I'm home, and I knock on the door, and my brother, who's also a physician, comes to the door and he's like, the hell happened to you, dude? And I just collapse. He takes me to the bathroom, takes my backpack off, this, like everything is like soaked on me. And we think that the bottle of wine was broken. That's what I was trying to tell him. Couldn't speak because I had a concussion. He pulls a full bottle of wine out.
Mm.
And that was when he goes, oh crap. So we start doing all these different pathologies, all these different orthopedic tests to like look for broken bones and internal contusions. So we end up going to the ER, had internal contusions and lacerations and this, that, and the other thing. Kidneys didn't rupture, spleen didn't rupture, nothing crazy, but still had some like pretty serious issues. So all of that started to spiral down this negative rabbit hole. And I started to sink into this depression of, I don't know what the heck I'm like meant to do with this. And like, I can't move my body and all these other different factors that were really starting to come in. 3 weeks into that healing process, I was watching my really healthy body just deteriorate into nothing. And I just like watched like everything that I was working for and everything that I loved, I couldn't do. I was literally like the epitome of the person I didn't want to be. Netflix and sit there. Couldn't go to class, couldn't do this, couldn't do that. I just sat there in pain. So 3 weeks into that healing journey, I found out that my dad had committed suicide out of the blue. That dad was my best friend. He lived like in Atlanta with my brother and I. He used to build movie sets. Like we had no idea. And that rocked me and my brother just to the floor. And we just couldn't comprehend. And like, you always ask the why, what the fuck, like how, like all these different questions started to come up. So in the process of that shattered the emotional, spiritual. I was like, there's no purpose to this. This is chaotic. Like bad things happen to good people type of thing. And I started to like run that loop in my head. Like I was a good person. Like I gave to like the needy and things like that. And how did I get hit by a car and then lost my dad? And then I went to the hospital the day after that. We found out my dad had passed away and signed a waiver stack like this big. And they're like, yeah, I'm not going to have all this like equipment on me to go to my dad's funeral. And I'm not going to fly with this because my brother's going to have to carry me and I'm going to empty a catheter bag and all this BS. And they're like, okie dokie, but like sign all of this. So I signed all these waivers and things like that. And I left and I went for a walk and it hurt like hell. And you just start the healing process. And for anybody out there that's not aware, your body doesn't want to be sick. It doesn't want to be in pain. That's just kind of a default setting for it. And the pain receptors that are associated with physiological pain is the same brain center that is associated with emotional pain. So if somebody is like depressed or they have anxiety or it's causing them pain versus somebody that gets like punched in the arm, it lights up the same center in the brain. It's very, very difficult to distinguish the two of them. So it was a mix of like, okay, I have a physical trauma, I'm very aware, but I also have a lot of emotional trauma. So the body healed. And at the time got this woman that I was with, amazing lady, pregnant. And I was like, shit, like I'm 22, all this stuff. And then the day after that, I like got called into the advisory board and they're like, all right, here's like your projection for when you get out of school. It's going to be around 200K at like 7 or 8% a year. And I was like, huh? Like I have like $17 in my bank account. I'm going to go buy like sardines and beans with that so I can like eat for a week. And they're like, yep. So that's that. So all of this started to stack on me. And I was at a low, right? I was at a real low. So one night I went for a drive and I just was like, screw this. Like I'm going to get away. So I'm going down the expressway and I end up just like blacking out. I don't know what happened during that period of time, but I just like got on I-75 and went north out of Atlanta. And I just remember tears streaming down my face. And I was just like, kept saying like, fuck this, fuck that, like all these different things. Like, this is bullshit. Like, I don't deserve this life, blah, 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 blah. And if you've ever cried as hard as you possibly can that you black out, that was me. So I blacked out and it was like, the middle of February at this time and all these things had kind of gone on. And I woke up like 300 miles away in a bathroom. And I don't know, like, guys, I don't know what happened in the middle of that period of time. I've done psychotherapy and like EMDR and all these type of regression therapies to try to figure out what happened because I drove like 2 hours and I don't remember a wink of it. So I go back in those time periods. I'm like, what happened? And at this point, I've given up. It's like, it doesn't matter. It was like something divine that I can't make sense of, and that's okay. So during that period of time, I woke up in a Waffle House in Tennessee and I was like, where am I? Because I thought I was dead. Like literally, I remember blacking out and I was going like 85 and I was like, well, this is the end of it. And came to, and I was like, where am I? And they're like, you're in Tennessee in this little rinky dink town. I was like, is my car outside? And they're like, yep, car's outside. You're fine. You walked in and you said, need to go to the bathroom. Somebody help. And I came in here and I've been sitting with you for like 3 hours. So this waitress, like, it was like 3 a.m. in the morning, and she just took care of me. Um, and during that period of time, there's like a Kroger across the street, and the chef went out. They like closed the restaurant, which Waffle Houses don't close. He went, spent his own money, and got me like a new shirt and a new short because I had like purged all of these things out of my system. And they sat me up, cleaned me off. Like they just took care of me, like these angels. Like I still don't know. I haven't been back to the Waffle House, honestly, either. I can say that. But they just took care of me, and I was like, why didn't you call the police? Like, don't you think I'm like overdosed or like whatever the heck it was? And they're like, there's something different about you. There was something very different about you. So they cleaned me up and they gave me coffee and they gave me a meal. And I sat there and I just started pondering. I'm like, there's got to be a purpose to this. Like there's no way like this type of thing is just random. I'm not going to be a dad that's not present in my daughter's life. I didn't know I was having a daughter at the time, but I'm not going to not be present in my child's life. And I made a point right there, like, this is my low point. This is it right now. I'm at my low point, and I won't go any lower than this low point right now. So I wrote on a napkin, I will be better tomorrow than I am today. And that's kind of been my motto for this entire, like since that day, I'm going to be better tomorrow than I am today. And I just kept repeating this mantra over and over. Then I started to read books, and I started to read more books. And, knowledge is power was half the story that my mentor told me when I decided to make the turn, right? Because if there's two things that are required to make a change in your life, it's willingness and awareness. And the awareness comes before the willingness, but you have to say, here's where I am, and take a real serious inventory of your shit. And then you have to go, I don't want this anymore. Then you have to make a change. You have to find a purpose. And that purpose is the thing that provides you with the motivation. Because if you're like me, you went to YouTube motivational videos and you put your headphones on as loud as they go, and you just try to pump yourself up. And sometimes you feel a little bit better for like maybe 30 minutes or something like that, but you crash back down because you haven't lit the soul back up, right? The soul's purpose is an ember that will never go out, but you do have to fan it to ignite it, right? And that is just with awareness, with self-love, with compassion, with, okay, like there's times where I'm really mentally hard on myself, where I'm like, you should have done better. You should have done better. But I never choose to experience it emotionally, because you can know something and never have experienced it, right? When you merge those two together, that's what rewires your brain, right? When you ignite that up. So I started to read more books. Then I learned to do something called photo reading, which allows you to go from like 300 or 400 words a minute up to like 60, 70,000. Go check it out if you've never heard of it. It is a real thing, because I went into it trying to disprove it. So in a 3-month span of time, I read almost 300 books, like 273 books, all from Goodwill. And I spent maybe like $70 on all those books, if anybody's really wondering, because I would go on quarter book day, where personal development books and business books are a quarter. And I would hide them all in like the laundry section. And then I'd go in with like a $5 bill. And I knew the lady that worked on those days. And I said, can I carry as many books as I possibly can out of this store for $5? And she said, yep. So I would give her a $5 bill, and I would just stack books, and then I'd go read them at the Waffle House because I couldn't sleep. So that process kind of started. And after 273 books, I was not better at all. Zero change, zero progress. I knew how to read books, and I was an encyclopedia of knowledge, but to know and not to do is not to know, right? And I had not applied that information yet. And that was what my mentor told me. Knowledge is power, but it's potential power. So as soon as you begin to initiate action into that, that's when you really get it. And that was when I started to go deeper into the neuroscience of this. I was like, something is not connected. I have all of this information. What is going wrong? And I hadn't turned on those centers of my brain of creative problem solving. I got the tools to dig myself out, right? I got a shovel, and I started to get materials to build a ladder out of this hole that I had dug, all of these different things, but I had not utilized them yet. And especially when it comes to your soul's tools, your endowed tools that you're born with, I hadn't even begun to utilize those, right? Because I knew that I liked to speak, and that I liked to talk, and that I liked to write, do all these things. I had no idea what a personal coach was. I didn't even know what a speaker was. But those were things that I was endowed with at birth that I love to do. And I love to translate very complex information into things that are functional for people. And that's what it really came down to. And if you guys are wondering what those tools are, you know what they are. It's meditation, it's journaling, exercise, and sleep. right? All of those different things. That's the biohack. And then you get somebody that can help facilitate asking better questions. Get a coach, get a therapist, get a friend, get your grandma to just point out, like, what do you see about me? And then take a humongous scoop of humble pie and say, great, here's the awareness, right? And now I have to get the willingness to change this. You have the tools, right? And if you don't have the tools yet, you need to find the silence within your soul to find what they are, because they're already inside of you. And I humbly believe that we all have exactly what we need right now. We just need to shut up and listen to what that actually is.
Man, so the first thing that I'm thinking is, I'm thinking of two words. I'm thinking of the trauma and the resilience. Like, the whole story kind of made me think that even at our lowest point as human beings, and as much as we go through, our body is resilient. Like, ultimately, the thing is, we don't want to die. Like, we're survivalists. But just like, we can go through so much, and I think that to get where we're called to get, we have to go through our version of that process. Like, every single person's version of what you just said, we're all going to have that version for us that's going to look unique to our story. What if you could go back and you could talk to yourself in that moment from a space that you're in now, what kind of encouragement would you give yourself?
I honestly wouldn't say a damn thing. I would just let them figure it out, because I know myself enough that I'm too fucking stubborn to like would have changed. Like, nobody, I'm one of those people, and like I definitely got that rubbed off from my brother, who is just a earth sign Taurus, just a brick shit house, and he's stubborn as hell. And you can't tell him anything. He has to tell himself that. And I'm so that way too, of like, somebody like told me to go do something, and I'm way better at it now of like asking for help. But at that period of time, I had to hit that bottom. I had to hit that low. And I would have like just looked at myself, and I would have gone back, and I would have just smiled, because the thing that I needed more than anything was kindness. I just needed somebody to like constantly remind me every single day, like, you're going to be okay.
And I'm curious, like, for the people, a lot of my audience are people with disabilities, and they're probably saying, well, fuck you, man, that's great for you, but that's not possible for me, because I've got this thing, whatever it is, that's holding me back. I'm already physically broken, and I don't see a way that I can make a change. What would you tell them?
You can't read the label inside the jar. If you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. And I am saying this with a humongous scoop of like humbleness, of like, I can't be where your audience is. I've gone through my own struggles and my own challenges, and I've come out the other end having released those. So if you have been gifted, I would say, honestly, genuinely say, with a form of disability, you have the right to share that. You have, I damn near say, the birthright to share that and connect with people. So like, if you have a condition, you come in absolutely perfect. And if you have a physical ailment, the smartest human beings that I've ever met on the face of this earth, the smartest ones, have disabilities. So if your physical body isn't as tuned in, you are mentally there. I promise you. And whether or not you choose to accept that gift is totally up to you. Or you're emotionally there, or you can manifest like crazy shit that the rest of us like don't have that skill to do. Like, you're perfect as you are. And the more that you come to that realization that you are whole, and that you are complete and that you are everything that you need in this exact moment, the more that your soul, you'll fan that ember, right? You'll ignite those things, especially like what we're doing right now and having this type of connection. Like, it's not easy to do this kind of thing, but when you're plugged into that purpose and that passion, you're taken care of. The universe has your back in every sense of the way. Like I say this again with I can't comprehend where some of your audience is coming from. I've had mental challenges for sure, emotional challenges, and some other, circumstantial things that have come up. There's something called soul contracts, and there's a really good book about this, that you came into this physical body knowing that you were coming into this physical body. I came into this physical body knowing that I was coming into this physical body. And I say this to your audience, not to rub them a brash, but to potentially read that book and hope that it empowers you. You came in with these gifts. And what society, out of a loving, peaceful, respectful way, tends to focus is on the disability, right?
Yeah.
That's what they tend to focus on, is the one thing that's wrong all the time. And then as kids growing up, our parents just want what's best for us, but they try to alleviate a symptom more and more and more. And then we become our disabilities in so many different ways, because for a period of time, I had become the kid that had a suicidal dad, and that became a label for me. So the more that you're able to peel back those layers and not see yourself as that, but as you, right? Don't let society have those labels. So like a really great question is, how have I labeled myself? How is that manifesting? Because those labels are there for a reason. They create these boxes of certainty, right? Because inside of that label, in that space, you know exactly who and what you are,
Yeah.
right? But everything that you want doesn't live in certainty. It lives in the quantum, right? It lives in the potential. And that requires you to step outside of yourself, to get outside of the jar, to get outside of your labels, right? So learning to do strategies like getting a facilitator to help with holotropic breath work, right? That's a really phenomenal way to step out of yourself, and you literally become the observer of the observing, right? When you are able to do those types of things and have those skills and strategies, you are no longer these things. You are only your gifts. You are only your soul connected to something bigger than yourself. You are on a mission that is unwavering. Like you cannot get disconnected. And I'm trying to think of this gentleman's name, and I cannot do it for the life of me. But he had osteogenesis imperfecta. And
Sean Stevenson.
Sean Stevenson, one
Yeah.
of the most extraordinary humans I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. And if you haven't listened to any of his talks, he has one of the best podcasts and one of the best talks I've ever seen on Mind Valley. Go look it up. And he talks about peeling back these labels, because the labels had defined him. And then when he said, fuck that, he became who he was meant to be, this speaker, this doctor. He went and got his PhD when he didn't know if he would have fallen down a flight of stairs, he was dead, but he didn't give a shit. He was just going to go and live his best life and continue to thrive in the moments that didn't make sense. And he was one of those people that, for me, we define ourselves so often by what's wrong. Start defining yourself by what's right. Right? Give yourself the opportunity to thrive in the moments of challenge, to look back and say that you've been gifted with this opportunity, that if you can't walk or all these other different things, amazing. You chose this for a reason, right? Your soul got downloaded into this body. Maybe you were meant to be a critical thinker. Maybe you were meant to translate information. Maybe you were meant to be an extraordinary writer, a painter, a therapist, somebody that can coach people, a connector. All of these different things are inside of you. And the only way that you're ever going to find what that is in the silence of your own heart. And guys, let me be the one to tell you, your heart does not speak in anything crazy. It's very concise. It's very clear. Learn to silence down, learn to listen. That's where the gold in you is. That's where those golden threads can be pulled.
It's so funny. So I went through my own emotional intelligence journey and training, and I just remember every time in that particular one, my coach would ask, "Where do you feel it? Where do you feel it?" And every single time for me, like when it matters most, or when it's impacting me the most, it's always in my heart every time.
Yeah, the heart doesn't lie. And I say that also with the caveat of, like, you have a brain for a reason, right? You're meant to connect, you're meant to reach, you're meant to strive, you're meant to do all of these extraordinary things as well. And you're meant to think, right? You're not just meant to feel your way through the universe and things like that. But that's the thing, like your brain is very trainable. It's very malleable, and it's a very simple system. It's the law of averages. What you think about, feel about, and do most of the time, you become. So ask yourself, like get a calendar, get a daily clock, and ask yourself what you're doing on a daily basis. And if you're just caught on social media or all these things, great. Just replace it with a book or an audio or, some kind of thing that's going to empower you. I don't care what that is, as long as it's something that's coming from like the silence of your own heart and things like that. Because like, oh, I'm going to go like smoke a bowl and go drink like 6 beers and like that'll clear my head. I'm like, it is a band-aid on a bullet hole. You're going to bleed out through that thing in a very short amount of time. It's unsustainable. That's
Yeah.
where mindfulness and journaling and all these other things, they are nasty uncomfortable, right? So don't start off doing anything crazy. Start with a 5-minute meditation, then go to 10 minutes next week or 7 minutes, right? That's what I tell all of my people. And guys, I try to meditate every day and I practice it, right? You cannot master meditation. And I dare say the word meditation anymore because it's all mindfulness. So if you're sitting there and you need to take a pen to a paper, or you just need to like look at a chalk wall, or you need to go like watch the grass grow and things like that, go for it. Find what works for you. You need to be the scientist of your own life.
Yeah, that's so interesting the way you phrase that. Like everything really is an experiment.
Yeah,
Like remember back in elementary school and use the scientific process and see what happens.
exactly.
Man, I love this conversation. You said something and you touched on it just a minute ago. So I want to touch quickly on this, but you are trying to get mindfulness into prisons.
I am. So I think everybody deserves a second, third, fourth, fifth, as many chances as humanly possible to be a human. And a lot of us can't comprehend the lives of those inmates that made a bad choice or a string full of bad choices. We've all made bad choices, right? And especially this year, a lot of the research is coming to the surface of like Black Lives Matter and things like that. Well, our prison systems are very full of like our fellow brothers and sisters. I don't care, where they have done or where they came from and things like that. They deserve a second chance at themselves, and they don't learn mindfulness strategies or atonement strategies or like ways that they can like genuinely rehab. And when you go into a system like that, you need to have a strategy, because you can go in and they have therapists and things like that, but therapy is very objective, right? Like I say that wall is white because I say it's white, right? And my happiness is different from your happiness. Well, we have science, we have biometrics that can actually show us improvement. So this ring that I'm wearing is not a wedding band, it's a biometric reading device. So this is reading my heart rate variability, oxygen saturation, movement, all of these different rest recovery type of paradigms that I can look deeper at and see, is this person actually making a biological, neurological, physiological change to their bodies? And I'm trying to bring that into the South Carolina prison systems right now of, let's bring in some biometric data and everyone's going to be a case study of their own lives. I only want participants that are going to be able and willing to do some of these practices, to take care of themselves, and to really be interested in becoming the scientist of their own lives again, to give them a second chance. And then hopefully over time, we're hoping in 10 years, we'll have 100,000 case studies and we'll make a meta study of mindfulness in South Carolina prison systems or in the entire United States, because they deserve a second chance at themselves.
Yeah, and well, we've not talked about this, but I live in South Carolina as well. So I know that this is like if you are able to get that to start rolling, that'll be huge here.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
because this is about almost as deep south as it gets in some parts. What part, where are you at?
I'm in Charleston.
Oh, beautiful. I'm like right in, do you know where Bluffton, Hilton Head?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's me. Come visit.
Yeah, man. But I think mindfulness is key. That's something that I realized at the beginning of the pandemic, and especially again going back to um, my highest population of audience. Um, like that's a huge practice
Yeah.
when right now you are a lot of times stuck inside, even if we're open, just for dealing with your specific disability. I know you're stuck inside more often than not. What's one thing before we leave today? Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you want to leave the audience with?
So for a lot of our listeners out there that have disabilities and things like that, I would really encourage them to get into biohacking. I would really encourage them to take a look at some of Dave Asprey's books, and things like that, or to like reach out to me and like let me help with that, because I genuinely believe that some of our physically like challenged and things like that, they're having the most profound breakthroughs mentally, and sometimes we just haven't given them the tools or the clarity to really have their breakthroughs. And that's where I want them to get a razor sharp mind, and get into some of these things. So like getting some like blue blockers and things like that are really, really helpful. Getting out, if you can get outside and get into the sunlight, vitamin D is insanely important. Getting your feet on the earth, like some of these very small strategies, I implore you to empower yourself with education, right? If you feel stuck in some way, shape, or form, you can get yourself out of that, right? Do not label and confine yourself to these different things. So if you are in a wheelchair or physically disabled in some way, shape, or form, and again, I say this with a humble heart of somebody that is trying to look from an external perspective, I would sharpen the razor of your mind to make it just unfuckwithable. Make yourself bulletproof to the world. Love yourself more than anything. And this is advice I give to any single human being. And then also, if you know your mind is going to be razor sharp, great. And like the wittiest people on the face of the earth, the smartest people, again, the people that I like love having these connections with, they are physically disabled in a lot of different ways. And like, they're some of my best friends.
Yeah, I would agree. Learn to use your mind, because I'm gonna check that Soul Contracts book out.
So good.
Um, I think that's gonna be huge because I know without a shadow of a doubt, like the physical limitations led to abilities in other areas that people without this limitation don't have for sure.
Exactly.
Um, and I would implore anybody watching or listening that whatever your label is right now, don't let it be one that somebody else gave you, because then your potential becomes somebody else's limitation.
Yep. Claim it. If somebody's labeling you and they say like, oh, you are this, you go, I am this. Thank you. And then smack it with its polarity. Because if this is true, it's not a unified like theory type of thing. Everything has its duality, everything has its polarity, right? Nothing is good or bad. Thinking makes it so, right? So if somebody says that you are this, that, or the other thing, you go, I am. Thank you. And then you take that trigger and you say, fuck you. I am whole and complete inside of this body and I love myself, even if you are being an asshole.
Beautiful.
Sometimes you got to do that.
The last question, and we've touched on it plenty of times here, but what does no label defines me mean to you?
Ultimate self-love, self-compassion. That's it. When you love yourself more than anything else, and this is not an easy process, right? It's a daily process. It's a 1% shift every single day. Learning to love yourself, you become bulletproof. You become like resilient, anti-fragile, whatever you want to call it. Because when you determine your worth and your worthiness, nothing can fuck with you. Not your circumstances, not your body, not the external world. Nothing will mess with your peace. And that all comes down to, are you defining your worthiness and your love and your compassion, or is something external doing that for you? When you get down and peel back all those labels and you just see the truth of the matter, that you're whole, complete, loved, and worthy of everything that's coming to you, nothing can mess with you. No one.
Beautiful. And where can people connect with you?
Right now, I'm starting another YouTube channel. You guys are welcome to come check that out. But mostly I'm on Instagram and I run my Instagram. There's nobody else behind the page and it's me. So if you guys have questions, it's just Dr. Chris Lee, and it's spelled DrChrisLee. Drop me a message. I love getting messages from people and just asking questions. I'm here to help you in any capacity that I can. And I will absolutely point you to books, resources, research, or I'll just drop you 20-minute audio messages that'll help you out in any way that I can possibly serve you. So please reach out if any of this is connected with you.
And ladies and gentlemen, with that, you can see us here next Friday for another episode of No Label Live.